Welcome to Game 3 of Dominion League match between Jmcgnh and Heyitstowler. I'm Shanahan here with Jnails.
Howdy. This set of expansions they're using, I feel like it's provoking some very sad kingdoms for the most part. I think so. They're playing base, seaside, and prosperity, and I think apart from alchemy, which would definitely make it worse. Base or not base, seaside and prosperity are two of the kingdoms with the most dud cards, like navigator and pirate ship and venture we see here, and it's leading to kingdoms that are definitely on the weaker side of things.
Yeah, and we could be seeing, for example, Fishing Village or something that from Seaside, which is a very nice village and leads to interesting or Wharf or some of the stronger cards.
Yeah, Seaside's got some really strong cards and some really weak cards. I think it's one of the earliest expansions, and I think the fact shows in its balance. Relative to more modern expansions, it's less evenly distributed in terms of power level.
So I'm not quite sure where one opens on this kingdom. You really want to get grand markets, but it's pretty tough to do that without copper thinning.
Yeah, I don't know. I think I want to play with Sea Hag. Trash and Curses seems annoying and difficult.
Yeah, and poachers, a couple of poachers probably are fine.
Yeah,
And
Poacher seems all right. I wouldn't open with it, I don't think. Like Poacher Silver would be a pretty fine opening if your main goal is to hit 5, right? Like, let's say Mountebank's in the kingdom. You often probably just want to get to Mountebank ASAP and start playing it. Poacher Silver is good there. I don't like it here very much because the 5s are uninspiring. Venture is really bad and Treasury is pretty mediocre. So I'd be open with a card that does something for me immediately, like Sea Hag.
or when you say, I know what you mean when you say that, but when you say does something for me immediately, which is slow my opponent down, is what it does for you immediately.
Yeah, that's fair. Sea Hag doesn't actually do anything for you directly immediately, but it does something against your opponent immediately, which is functionally equivalent in a zero-sum game.
Yeah, I don't think I want tons of the 3 and 4 cost items, so the talisman doesn't seem super great here.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of the talisman.
And we discussed this. I think you discussed this in JMC's last match. The opportunity cost for the bishop is that Towler spends time and energy trashing cards for a small amount of victory points, and JMC spends no time or energy, just gets to freely trash a card whenever Towler does, and doesn't get the VP, but also doesn't have to waste the time.
Yeah, exactly. I think Bishop is almost always a bad opener. It's like giving your opponent a free Cathedral. Cathedral being one of the strongest projects and something I would love to have.
Yeah. And JMC here should just happily trash
eventually if you want.
the states.
Yep. Like you can get Bishop here maybe eventually for scoring. That's fine. But what I would think is I want to get into the Sea Hag curses early, and then even if they manage to trash, let's say they get their bishop lined up and trash the curses with their bishop. Well, they're trashing their curses. I'm trashing my coppers with their bishop, and now I'm cleaner anyway because they're back to the standard starting junk, and I'm already clean. And then my bishop can actually trash like high value cards that are worth more points when I play it.
Yeah, so are you on that $6 hand for Towler? Are you getting a treasury?
I would think so. Yeah, I mean, treasury seems best here. It's still probably reasonably long before you green. Now, this kingdom is so weak that I can't really complain about gold as much as I would normally want to. Like gold is not a bad card to have here by any stretch, but treasury seems like a more reliable card.
Treasury is a card I like to play, especially if I'm building an engine and it's going to be a long time before I green. This is a kingdom. It seems like you may be greening fairly quickly before you have complete. You're not going to get deck control, so it's not like you're going to be able to play 5 treasuries, buy a bunch of actions, play 5 more, buy a bunch of actions every turn. But
yeah,
Teller did draw both they drew their silver and their gold together with their treasury. I don't think their deck is quite at the point of hitting 6 reliably without using copper, so that was quite nice to be able to afford a grand market, which obviously if you can here, you're going to buy a grand market.
Yeah.
That's the only reason I might consider getting a gold fairly early here is it does help you spike grand markets.
Yeah, Grand Market's not the strongest card in the abstract, but it's like reliably pretty darn good. And so if there's a convenient way to get it, you're often getting it. And you're definitely getting it over gold almost every kingdom.
Yeah. I wonder here, given that nobody's going for sea hags, if that makes the poachers better.
I would think so. I would think that the curses should run because sea hag seems like a clear opening to me. And then eventually that means one pile will be empty. And then poacher starts to look a lot worse.
Just thinking they had 5 in a talisman, they could have gotten 2 poachers or 1 treasury. I would have strongly considered 2 poachers. Maybe the top deck ability of the treasury is still good enough that it overcomes that. So one thing I've seen sometimes in my own games I've found is that if I let my opponent have the only bishop and I don't get a bishop, I just take the free trashing, but I don't play super focused. It just seems like my opponent and I have the same deck and they have free extra victory points that I don't have. So it's sort of like you get a little bit of a lead because they bought this bishop and you need to, really step on the gas and make use of that as quickly as you can. Otherwise, it does turn out to you have fairly identical decks. That was not right. Playing the poacher there.
Yeah.
What they did was they triggered a shuffle without both golds and the Grand Market in it. If they didn't play that poacher at all, they could have still bought a Grand Market, top deck to treasury, and then when they shuffled, all those good cards would be in the shuffle.
Yeah, something to be really cognizant of that new players I think often fail to recognize is that your shuffles aren't actually random. Even if the shuffle itself is done in a random way, the set of cards that's going into that shuffle is frequently influenced by other decisions you made. For example, which cards are in play right now versus out of place right now will influence which cards get shuffled when you shuffle the discard pile back into the deck. And so you can typically manipulate that. One common way being, if you know that the cards in your hand are really good and the cards in your deck are mediocre, then you probably want to avoid triggering a shuffle because then you're creating a new deck out of just the mediocre cards. I think that's a deck discard. Like if your discard pile is full of mediocre cards, then you trigger a shuffle early, you create a new deck that's just the mediocre cards. Whereas if you wait, you're shuffling a full deck that's got the good cards in it. I'm not explaining this particularly well, I don't think, but
yeah. But here you do want to trigger the shuffle because then the coppers will miss the shuffle and you won't have to look at those again. And you want to be
exactly. The reverse can also be true.
Although I guess it doesn't. They're not actually going to trigger a shuffle this turn. So, but yeah, they wouldn't want to stop there because they were going to shuffle because the remainder of this deck has a bunch of golds and grand markets in it, and they're going to be very happy to see all that.
Yeah, sometimes you've got a bunch of bad cards in your hand and good cards in the discard, and you're actively trying to trigger that shuffle early so that you can create a discard pile or a deck from your discard pile that's just the good portion of your deck, and then you're really happy.
Although again, even in A-League matches, you see people mismanage their shuffles. It's a tough thing to do. I think silver's probably better than nothing here. They're looking at possibly a double grand market turn. They've got 9 money in hand. Obviously, double grand market would be good to take the last 2. So I think I would not trash silver quite yet. I'm pretty sure they have another gold and another grand market down there. So yeah, now they can buy 2 grand markets. But the talisman, has the talisman done anything this game?
Let's find out.
I don't really have a good rule of thumb on a talisman when it's good. Basically, I want when I know I want my deck state to have 6 cards. When there's 2 piles, of 3 or 4 that I really want like 4 or 5 of each, then I really want the talisman. Or maybe 1 pile that I want to really go in fast on, like heralds, for example. Or there's like a village smithy thing, and so I want to be double gaining villages and smithies when I can. But this is a kingdom where I maybe have 1 sea hag, 1 poacher, 1 bishop, and that's the entirety of cards 4 and less that I want.
Yeah, so in terms of the drawbacks of talisman, so firstly, it's just on the face of it, it's a copper. So you have to add a copper to your deck, which is something you're often unhappy to do. And then it costs 4, which is the cost of the cards it would be gaining. So you have to pass up on buying a 4 to get it. And so if it gains you a 4, you're not even really ahead at this point because you ended up with 2 4s from your talisman buy. They ended up with 2 4s because they bought the thing instead of buying talisman and then just bought it again. But you're later to that game because they got that 4 into the deck earlier and maybe have played it a shuffle before you. And so it can be a little bit of a low tempo card. And then secondly is if you're trying to hit 5 sometimes, then talisman can be really unruly because if you see it in the $5 hand, you're really sad because you're either having to forego buying 5s or you're having to forego getting the talisman's effect.
Just going back to Tauler's turn, they got 2 treasuries and 2 golds. I think I would have just gone ahead and gotten the last treasury there. And I don't know what the golds are slowing them down. They want to be drawing grand markets, right? You'd much rather play all your grand markets than get stuck up on golds like they have here.
Yeah.
Although here I would definitely consider buying the last treasury, top decking 4 treasurers, and trying to pile like estates next turn, given the huge stack of grand markets in the remainder of the deck. I think 6 of those 13 cards are grand markets. They're just at a point now, if they buy a province, it's sad because all those treasuries get pulled out. It's like they know you're watching.
Yeah.
But I think I already said the golds are just getting in the way of drawing your grand markets. You want to be playing. I could see having a gold or 2 because they have the bishop and wanting to bishop the gold, but that they still have a whole bunch of coppers and silvers and stuff that they need to play bishop on.
It is just pleasant hearing someone else complain about gold for a change. To know the burden isn't always on me to spread the gospel.
Yeah. So, unfortunately, they are 1 buy short of a pile out here.
That's true. Alternatively, you could look at that as them being 27 money short of a pile out on provinces.
Yeah, 21, I think.
Is it 21? Did I do my math wrong?
No. You did it right. I did it wrong. 6 times 8 is 48.
There were 7 provinces, right?
Ah, that was why I did the math wrong. But that seems sufficient. I don't think JMC is going to be building up, hitting that high price point to buy double provinces reliably. And again, these decks do kind of fall apart once you stop top decking the treasuries every turn.
Let's see, draw a talisman here. I guess it doesn't matter. They have a massive points deficit. Even if they find the talisman, they can't pile out.
Yeah, they need 4 provinces, 3 provinces and a duchy or something.
That poacher's getting real sad.
Indeed. So Tauler does need to find. It's just that was all of JMC's money this turn. They're not going to have like any money next turn. Saying if they have another equal turn and can double province, then they've got a shot, but they just saw all their payload.
Yeah, I mean, double province is not unreasonable when you're that far behind. You can't afford to play it safe and be like, I don't want to give my opponent the opportunity to double province. Because if they do that, you're just definitely lost.
Yeah.
So here I would consider bishoping this treasury. Or this treasury.
And certainly this silver.
Yeah, now I'm killing the silver. It's not obvious that like this is worse than bishoping the treasury. But you're definitely looking to maximize your points here.
Yeah, I think Thaler had a little bit more focused build early on. The talisman, I think, was a mistake. The poacher is probably fine, but Thaler also had a real lucky draw on turn. What was it? Turn 8, turn 7, where they drew all their money without coppers at the top of the shuffles. They were able to buy a grand market, and it took JMC a few more turns to do that. All due to the early gold buy. So the early gold buy was key here.
Don't encourage it. Seahag at 10 also seems like a mistake for both of them.
Yeah, and you wonder sometimes people are reticent to go heavy for the attacks just because it doesn't feel sporting or something.
Maybe underestimate the strength of curses because JMC also get mounted bank twice. The curses hurt.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think we both thought JMC, if they they skipped the talisman, instead of a talisman, get a silver or a Seahag, they can get ahead pretty decisively. And certainly, I think if you open bishop to you open Seahag when they open bishop, they're just sad because they're spending all their trashes on coppers, right? And then curses, as you said earlier, and you're getting to trash your coppers for free while they're having to trash the curses that you gave them.
Now, I think that they're both mutually misdiagnosing this kingdom in chat here and chalking up the win to the early bishop. I don't think the bishop was a good opening here.
Yeah, I'm very excited when I play against someone and they open bishop.
Oh my goodness. So a little while back, I was trying to win games while opening curse on turn 1 and turn 2. And let me tell you, in the average kingdom, it's remarkably hard. Turns out not only forfeiting 2 turns straight, but then junking your deck is really bad for deck quality. You fail to hit 3 even a lot of the time. The one exception to that, was I would open curse, and then if bishop was in the kingdom, without fail, these like level, I don't know, 45 or so's, they'd buy the bishop, and then I would trash the curses, and I'd feel like I hadn't even given myself a disadvantage. Like they cleaned up my deck for me. And then the bishop openers would always lose to the double curse opening. I think that's pretty telling for the strength of bishop as an opener.
Yeah.
Bishop can be an interesting payload card. Like you add it when you're wanting to add victory points. It's a good way to score without lowering provinces. But it's not a good trasher because it's good at trashing your opponent's cards, basically, is the problem.
Yeah. Looking at the final deck state, the decks aren't that dissimilar. Thaler got 2 more grand markets and treasuries, 2 fewer silvers and 2 more gold, 1 more gold. The talisman is kind of notable. Also, having 4 silvers is kind of notable. I think you'd prefer to have fewer silvers and golds in this deck and more treasuries and grand markets, but
yes. To answer the discussion in chat here, with P League, I think one requirement is that the games must be rated. Practice League is for people who have played below a certain number of total rated games online. And so the one thing that's different for Practice League versus every other league is you have to play these games rated so they count towards rating. But beyond that, I think the same norm of just like the players can mutually agree on whatever they want tends to hold true. And so they just agree to play with a certain set of expansions.
Okay, well, that was game 3 to Thaler, and I will rejoin you in game 4.